Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
And now you're listening to me. I'm not sure you ever did before, but tonight there's no turning away from my voice. You and I are in the same living room. We chose together 6 years ago, though now it feels as if these walls are closing in. The photo I never deleted stares at me from my phone screen. A snapshot of our 5th anniversary. The two of us smiling in front of the ocean. That evening, I remember how you leaned against me, how your hair caught the light of the setting sun, how the corners of your mouth formed that easy laugh you used to have before everything turned so cold. I was going to remove that picture after all I've seen, but something in me refused. Sometimes a man holds on to things he can't even name. I spent our 6th anniversary in my car across the street from a French restaurant we'd never visited together. You told me you were meeting Laura. You looked me in the eye that morning and said you and your friend were going to try something fancy, a place known for its wine list and salmon tartare. I don't recall you inviting me. I don't recall you even using the word anniversary. There was no shared happy 6th, honey, just that calm, almost disinterested tone you've had for months. I nodded, said something about work. I didn't fight. Maybe part of me couldn't handle a fight with you anymore. I waited for you there because I had the day off. I told my boss I was sick. Just wanted to see a grown man sitting in a parking lot, watching a door. Pathetic, I guess, but you can't understand until it happens to you. The only thing that moved in me was the slow churn of anger. I stared at the neon reflection from the restaurant sign shimmering on my windshield. I stared at the clock on the dashboard ticking away the seconds. I tried to decide if I should step out, confront you, or do something else. Then you showed up, hair carefully arranged, wearing that gray coat I bought for your birthday last year. You walked in, didn't even check your phone. Maybe you assumed I wouldn't call. Or maybe you just didn't care. I waited 10 minutes. My watch beeped on the hour. My heartbeat hammered too hard. Then he appeared. A scrawny college kid, definitely younger than both of us. I watched him glance around, then hurry inside. I cracked my window and tried to breathe normally, but my pulse refused to slow. A small voice in my head told me, "Don't jump to conclusions. She might be meeting a coworker, some marketing associate." But I knew. You never wore that coat for business. You never put on those shoes for a simple dinner with a friend. And your face was different, lit with a tension I recognized but couldn't name. I got out of my car and approached carefully. I didn't walk into the restaurant, no. I stood by the sidewalk, found a vantage point near the large front window. The place was half empty. White tablecloths, flickering candles, expensive bottles displayed in a glass case. The kind of setting we'd once dreamed about visiting together, maybe when we thought we'd saved up enough. I saw you leaning toward him, resting your hand on his forearm as he spoke. I saw you both laugh. Then you touched his cheek, said something that made his eyes shine. The waitress poured wine. 2 glasses. You drank together, quickly, as if you were celebrating something, or maybe as if you needed courage. I pushed myself away from the window. I forced myself back into the driver's seat of the car, my hands shaking. I could have started the engine and gone home right then. I could have pretended I hadn't seen. But sometimes a man needs the truth hammered into his skull. So I stayed. And after a few minutes, you both stood up from the table. You walked side by side to a corner of the restaurant, where there was a little more privacy. A corner near the decorative plants, tall and slender. I could still catch glimpses through the glass if I moved a bit. Your lips pressed against his neck. His hand slid around your waist. I saw your shoulders rise, and your eyes closed. That was it. My mouth tasted metal. I wanted to do something, wanted to break the window, wanted to punch him, wanted to see your face when confronted. But I froze, pinned by the swirl of madness in my chest. It felt like 1,000 stinging needles under my skin. I hated that moment more than anything, how I did nothing but watch. When I finally started the car, it felt like a mechanical act, automatic, done by a man who couldn't remember his own name. I drove off. My eyes burned. I kept hearing your laugh in my head, seeing your hand on his arm, and I wished you had just told me it was over a long time ago. I got home, turned on the living room lamp, and stared at the emptiness. The ring on my left hand felt like a dead weight. I took it off, placed it on the table. It sounded heavier than it looked when it landed on the wood. I found an old sheet of paper near the bills, wrote a single line. You sank us for wine and a young body. I didn't even sign it with my name. Just folded it in the shape of a tiny boat. Ridiculous, maybe, but I was half crazed, half laughing at the absurdity. I marched to the bathroom, tossed that paper boat into the toilet, and watched it spin in the water. My hand hesitated on the flush lever. At first, it felt satisfying to see it swirl into oblivion. But something in me said, not yet. Don't kill it that easily. I walked away, left that little boat floating like some survivor of a shipwreck. I didn't tear my hair out. I didn't scream or weep. Instead, I did what I do best. I researched. I always had a gift for rummaging through files and data. The ring sat on the table. The toilet seat stayed up. The living room's single lamp glowed on an empty couch. And I sat down at my computer, opening more tabs than I could count, chasing a name. Trevor Holliday, or Trev, as I heard you call him once on the phone, though I pretended not to notice. I found him in the local college directory. Second-year marketing major. Some minor sports achievements, mostly track. A couple of photos from campus events. And then I dug deeper. Public records. Social media. Online rumor boards. My body felt numb, my fingers icy as I clicked from one link to another. Eventually, I struck gold, or poison, depending on perspective. A sealed complaint from last year. A girl under 18 had accused him of assault. The details never reached the final stage of prosecution. The case got dropped. People do that sometimes. They get pressured. They get threatened, or they get paid off. For him, it was just a bad rumor that had never come to anything. He stayed free. I sat in the darkness, watching the shapes of light flicker on the wall from my monitor. This wasn't me. I was never the guy to sabotage someone's life. I never used my knowledge or my resources for personal vendettas. But there's a line that cracks inside a man when his dignity is trampled. When he sees his wife with another man. When he realizes he's been a fool. That line broke in me. I stared at the complaint details. I saw the date, the location, the hush of it all. And a voice in my head said, he destroyed your anniversary. She destroyed your marriage. You're free to do what you have to. I heard your key in the door around midnight. You stepped in. You looked around. The living room lamp was still on. I didn't move from the desk, but I saw your reflection in the window's glass. You took off your coat, paused when you noticed my ring on the table. Then you called my name. Your voice wavered. I said nothing. I just stared at the reflection of your face, waiting to see if you'd walk over to me. But you didn't. You stood there with the ring in your hand, silent. After a few seconds, you put it down, went upstairs. The quiet footsteps on the stairs told me more than you realized. I remember feeling my lungs tighten. But I stayed with that glowing monitor, thinking about the next move, not about heartbreak or sorrow, just the next move. It took me another day to gather the right files, the right screenshots, the right references. I posed as an anonymous tipster, filled out forms online, typed messages to relevant authorities. I included photos I'd taken with my phone from the restaurant, grainy, but enough to show him, distinctly older than the teenage girl from last year's complaint, but still too young for all of this. I added the date he'd assaulted that minor, statements from witnesses I found on a quiet local forum, rumors that matched official records. I compiled addresses, the time he usually left his dorm, the phone numbers of a couple of girls who'd posted about him. Then I pressed send on everything. Clean and neat. I made sure my tracks were covered, used a throwaway email, a private connection. My heart hammered in my chest, but I told myself it was done. There's a certain finality in sending your revenge out into the digital void. I didn't talk to you much during those 2 weeks that followed. You asked me once if we could discuss our marriage. I just said, we have nothing to discuss. My voice cracked at the last word, but I didn't let it stop me. No talk about my pain, no talk about your reasons. You spent more time in the upstairs bedroom. I slept on the couch, or at least tried to. Nights felt endless, and I'd stare at that photo on my phone, our old anniversary shot, the two of us in brighter times. If your footsteps ever approached, I pretended to be asleep. That was easier than hearing your hollow apologies, or your half-hearted attempts to comfort me. Maybe you thought we could salvage something. You never openly spoke about him. But I knew you met him again. I watched you fix your hair, choose your outfit, walk out the door. I didn't track you, didn't wait by any restaurants. The decision was set in motion. I let you do what you wanted. One crisp morning, as I was sipping the world's emptiest cup of coffee on our front porch, I heard the sirens. A pair of police cruisers rolled quietly onto our street. They weren't wailing with alarms, just rolling in with that sense of purpose. I turned my head, saw them stop by a small apartment building where I knew he sometimes stayed when not in the dorm. I recognized his car in the driveway, an older model sit-in. My pulse spiked. Adrenaline hammered through my veins. I watched from across the lawn, leaning back on the porch rail. I saw him step out, barefoot, wearing only a t-shirt and gym shorts. He looked half awake, rubbing his eyes. Then I saw the police approach. They talked for a minute. He tried to stay calm, but I noticed the fear in his posture as he took a step back, then two. I could almost read his lips. What is this about? The officer said something. The second officer moved behind him. And soon enough, I watched them handcuff him. No huge spectacle, no big chase, just a quiet, humiliating moment in the morning sun. You came to the door then, noticing the lights. Your hand still held a mug of coffee. You stared at the scene, and I felt your gaze shift to me, as if you suddenly realized I wasn't just a bystander. I saw your lips part in confusion, or maybe panic. I said nothing. I just kept leaning against the porch rail, letting the morning air fill my lungs. Trev, your Trev, was being led to the cruiser. His voice rose. I think he started yelling. Something about, I didn't do anything. The officers pressed him into the backseat. The door shut. That was it. I turned to look at you, met your eyes for the first time in weeks. What I saw there was something beyond shock. A meltdown. A silent, crumbling horror that contorted your face from inside. You put a hand over your mouth. The mug slipped from your other hand, spilling coffee onto the steps. For a second, I almost felt pity, but I forced it down, watched as your eyes darted from me to the squad cars. You seemed to be searching for some explanation in my expression. I offered none. I finished my coffee with a final swallow, then set the empty cup on the porch. And yes, I heard your voice try to form my name, broken, unsteady, but you found no words to ask me. I didn't see fear for him in your eyes. I saw confusion about what we had become, or maybe confusion about who I had become. I let the moment stretch. The cops drove away. The neighbors on the other side of the street peered from their windows, but nobody approached us. That's how it is in these suburbs. Everyone sees, but no one intervenes. Later that day, you confronted me in the kitchen. I was rinsing a plate, letting the water run over my hands. You stood there, hair disheveled, raw tension in your voice. I need to talk, you said. I kept my back turned. I'm busy. Damn it, look at me. Why? My voice nearly broke. Because that was all you managed. I heard you inhale, trying to steady your voice. I turned off the faucet, turned around. The tension in my neck was so tight I thought something would snap. What did you do? You demanded, eyes wide. Me? I gestured at the sink. I'm just washing the dishes. You handed him over. You must have done something. I can't believe. Why would the police? You slapped the countertop, searching for any kind of sense in all of this. I dried my hands with a dish towel, looking at you. Then your voice rose, and I watched your eyes fill with the kind of desperation I'd never seen in you before. "How could you?" you yelled. "He didn't deserve. He's just a—" "Tell that to the girl he messed with last year," I snapped. "Maybe her parents felt differently." Your breath caught, and your words came out shaky. "So that's it. You're punishing me by punishing him." I let out a low exhale, feeling a raw burn in my throat. "Does it matter why?" You flinched at the coldness of my tone. I saw your hands tremble. Then you shouted, "Don't you dare act like some righteous, some twisted avenger. You're my husband." "Was," I said. "I was your husband. Now, I'm the guy who does what he thinks is right." "Right?" You practically hissed the word. "Right? Ruining him, that's right. Putting a predator behind bars might be." "He's not a predator," you screamed. "You don't know him." "That's clear," I said quietly. "But I know you. And I know that on our 6th anniversary, you let him put his hands all over you in a fancy restaurant. So maybe you and I don't know each other at all. Maybe we never did." Your mouth opened, but the words didn't come. For a second, I thought you might collapse right there. The frustration, the rage, the sorrow swirling in your eyes. I felt no triumph in that sight, but no remorse either. This was simply the consequence. You stormed out of the kitchen, slammed the door to the bedroom. The house shook. I stayed by the sink, letting my pulse settle. I turned on the faucet again, rinsed a random glass, more out of habit than anything. My knuckles turned white as I gripped the edge of the sink. Then I took a breath. The leftover water droplets shimmered under the fluorescent light. The next few days were grim. You wandered around like a ghost, sometimes pacing, sometimes leaning against the walls, as if you were about to speak but couldn't. I could sense your mind racing. You probably weighed each option, telling the police it was me, that I'd fabricated evidence or something. But I didn't fabricate anything. I just pointed them in the right direction. If the charges wouldn't stick, that wasn't my concern. Part of me wondered if you'd try to visit him, bail him out, or speak to a lawyer. But you seemed dazed, pinned under a sudden avalanche of real consequences. Maybe you realized for the first time that your fling with a college kid had a darker side than you anticipated. You were trapped in your own guilt, or maybe you just didn't know how to face me. One night, after you locked yourself in the bedroom again, I decided I'd had enough. I knocked on the door. Once, twice. You didn't respond. I felt a sudden urge to see if your eyes would meet mine at least once more. When I opened the door, I found you sitting on the edge of the bed, hugging a pillow. Your hair was messy, tears streaked your cheeks, and your wedding ring still sparkled on your finger in the faint light. "What do you want?" you asked, voice hoarse. I looked around the room that used to be ours. The bed was still made from the morning, neat blankets, your phone lying on the nightstand, pictures of us at Disneyland years ago, a photo of you with your brother, the small decorative lamp. Everything looked normal except for the heaviness in the air. "I came to get a shirt," I said, gesturing vaguely at the closet. "Then I'll be out of your way." You didn't move, didn't speak. I crossed the room, opened the closet, pulled out a few clothes. The tension closed in around us. Suddenly, you stood. You took a shaky breath and nearly shouted, "You think this is all my fault, right?" I paused, my hand on the closet door. "You want me to say it's not?" Your voice cracked, and you balled your fists. "You were always so distant, so Dan. So, stop," I said. "Don't turn this into my failing. You made a choice. Because you wouldn't see me," you yelled, tears shining in your eyes. "I was here. I was begging for your attention. And you were always wrapped up in your own world. And that justified going to bed with a kid." You clenched your jaw. "No, but you don't get to pretend you were the perfect husband. Don't you dare." My jaw tightened. I turned to leave, but you grabbed my arm. Look at me. Do you think I wanted it all to end like this? I shrugged off your hand. I think you wanted excitement, and you found it. You're cruel, you whispered. I shrugged again. You're alone. You inhaled sharply, as if I'd slapped you. Then your temper boiled over. I hate you, you blurted, voice breaking. I hate who you've become. You're not a man. Not the man I married. I didn't look back. You're right. I'm not. I left the room, closed the door behind me, felt my heart pounding. My breathing came out ragged. My body shook with that aftertaste of confrontation. But I didn't regret a single word. Something in me had gone numb the moment I saw you kiss him at the restaurant. Maybe that numbness was what kept me functioning. Or maybe it was the only thing left of me. Days turned into weeks. The legal process ground on. Trevor was out on bail soon enough, from what I gathered. Some new hearing was scheduled. I read about it online, scanned the local news, saw a small mention about a young man being investigated for an old complaint. No mention of new charges, but they took it seriously this time. The difference was that now, there were more people willing to talk. The hush around him was gone. I considered that a victory, in a grim, hollow sense. You tried once to speak about us. You followed me into the garage while I was checking the tire pressure on my car. We need to figure out if we're divorcing, you said, arms crossed. Is that a question? I asked. You stared at me, tears welling up again. I'm sorry, you murmured. I just need to say it. I'm sorry. I nodded cold. I heard you. That's all. Yes, you swallowed, looking at the concrete floor. Then you turned and left. At some point, I found you collecting your clothes in suitcases. I watched from the hallway. I asked no questions, offered no help. You paused once, as if hoping I'd try to stop you. I didn't. You zipped the suitcase, grabbed the handle, and disappeared down the stairs. I heard your footsteps fade, the front door open and shut. Then the house was quiet. I stood there, waiting for some wave of emotion to crash over me. It never did. I just looked at our old wedding photo on the wall near the staircase. I remembered how, in that photograph, we were both so sure about love. Now that memory felt like something that happened to someone else. I moved your framed pictures into a spare closet. I didn't smash them or throw them away. I just stored them out of sight. I left the wedding ring on the kitchen counter, next to the salt and pepper shakers. I guess I wanted you to see it if you ever came back. I continued going to work, continued paying the bills, feeding myself, going through the motions of normal life. Some nights, I scrolled through my phone, idly looking at that one photo from last year, the one I couldn't delete, the one where we stood at the beach. I didn't know who I was in that picture anymore. One afternoon, I got an unexpected text from your number. I read it in silence. I'm at a motel. Don't worry. I won't come back unless you say so. I'm sorry for everything. R. I stared at the screen, reread the words. Didn't reply. My hand trembled slightly, but I pressed the phone lock button and slipped it into my pocket. Another part of my life closed. Another piece of my old self turned to dust. I remember stepping outside and feeling the sun on my face, noticing how bright the day was, how normal. The world didn't care that I was unraveling. Meanwhile, the case against Trevor trudged forward. I was never directly contacted by law enforcement. My tip was anonymous. Maybe in time, they'd piece things together, but it wouldn't matter. I had nothing else to lose. If they wanted to question me, I'd stand by what I gave them. It wasn't a lie. I believed that if the old complaint was real, if the girl was telling the truth, then Trevor deserved the consequences. You might have called me vengeful, and maybe I was, but I also felt a cold sense of righteousness. The guy was messing around with minors, and then messing with my wife. I had no qualms about shining a harsh light on him. 2 weeks after you left, I heard from a mutual friend that you'd been looking for a lawyer, maybe to handle a divorce, maybe to help Trevor. Who knows? It was none of my concern. Our friend told me your mother was worried about you. I didn't respond. People asked how I was doing. I said I was fine. And on the surface, I was. I got up, went to work, came home to an empty house, ate dinner, repeated it all the next day. But something in me had changed. I was quieter at the office. I took fewer calls. I turned down after-work gatherings. A couple of colleagues tried to invite me to a bar. I declined. One of them, an older guy named Ron, put a hand on my shoulder and said, "Hey man, if you need to talk." I just shook my head and gave a polite nod. I didn't have words for what I was going through. I didn't even know if there was anything left to say. Eventually, you called me from an unknown number. My phone buzzed. I answered because I wasn't expecting a telemarketer at that hour. The moment I recognized your breath on the line, I almost hung up. But I let you speak. "I just wanted to hear your voice," you said. Silence. You cleared your throat. Are you okay?" "Yes." Where do we stand?" I looked at the wall in front of me, noticing the paint cracks, the small imperfections. "We don't," I said. "We're done standing." A pause. Then your voice cracked. "I deserve that." "Yes." Another silence. I heard you inhale, maybe trying not to cry. "I miss you," you whispered. I closed my eyes, feeling my jaw tense. "I don't know who you are." Your words choked. "I'm the same person, just." "No," I said. "I'm not sure you ever were who I thought you were." More silence. Then you whispered, "I understand." I hung up, threw the phone onto the couch, sat there, breathing like I'd just run a mile. My heart hammered. My face felt hot. But no tears came. Only that same raw emptiness in my chest. I looked around the living room, the place that used to be ours, the spot where we unwrapped Christmas presents, the corner where you insisted on placing fresh flowers each week. Now the coffee table was bare. The bookshelf was half empty because you took some of your favorite novels. The couch pillow was out of place, and I left it that way. A home dissolves in slow increments. I tried to find comfort in the things I used to enjoy. Reading, photography, jogging. But every time I lifted my camera, I remembered the reason I'd once started capturing moments, to share them with you. And every time I set out for a run, I felt the sting in my left knee from an old injury, reminding me that everything eventually comes back to haunt us. One evening, rummaging through old boxes, I found a stack of photos from our first year of marriage. I stopped on an image of you wearing that silly hat on your birthday, grinning as if the world were bright and hopeful. I stared at it for a while, then carefully tore it in half. It gave me a twisted sense of closure, though I couldn't quite bring myself to tear up the others. I guess I was still punishing you, or maybe punishing me. In all of this, time marched on. The day came when I received a letter in the mail from your lawyer. Standard divorce petition. Our state mandates a period before finalizing anything, but you'd started the process. I ran my eyes over the official words, the demands, the property listings. My signature was needed. I left it on the table for a week, unopened after that first glance. Couldn't muster the energy to finalize the end. But one night, I found myself at the kitchen table with a pen in hand. I thumbed through the pages, reading the legalese, trying not to dwell on any memories. Then I signed. I put the forms in an envelope, addressed it to your lawyer, sealed it. That was that. The next morning, I mailed it. And with that signature, I felt an odd sense of relief, as if I were stepping off a battlefield. Tired, maybe wounded, but still walking. Part of me expected to feel some regret, some ache. Instead, I found myself standing in the post office lobby, gazing at the big American flag on the wall, feeling nothing but clarity. You had made your choice. I had made mine. That day, I got an urgent call from my sister, worried about me. She'd heard rumors through some friend or another that I was living alone, that you had left. She wanted to drive down. I told her no, to let me handle my life. We parted on uneasy terms. People wanted to fix me, but I wasn't broken in a way that needed others. I needed to come to terms with who I'd become. At home, I stared at the photo from our 5th anniversary on my phone. The waves behind us. That bright smile you had. My own grin that now felt foreign. I still couldn't delete it, though I'd moved everything else into digital archives. I turned off the screen, thinking about what you said on the phone. I'm the same person. No, you weren't. Or if you were, I never saw the truth. And maybe I wasn't the person I used to be either. My nights stayed silent for the next few weeks. I rarely left the house except for work or groceries. The divorce was in process, and you seemed too afraid or ashamed to reach out again. Maybe you were still mourning the collapse of your illusions, or maybe you were scrambling to salvage your life, your career. I didn't care. My bed was emptier, but also calmer. I no longer listened for your footsteps on the stairs. I no longer dreaded the forced small talk in the kitchen. Eventually, I heard the news that Trevor's hearing was set for the following month. Maybe the lawyers would strike a deal, or maybe it would go to trial. The rumor was that more witnesses came forward. I didn't celebrate, but I felt a grim satisfaction. He'd laughed with you over expensive wine on my anniversary, and now he faced charges that might change his entire future. A part of me considered it justice. Another part of me recognized how twisted it all was. I didn't lose sleep over it, though. One morning, on my day off, I sat in the living room, flipping through channels on the TV. Nothing caught my attention until I stumbled on an old war documentary. Men in uniform trudging through mud, the narrator describing the sense of betrayal among allies. I turned the sound off, just watched their faces on the screen. Tired, hollow, determined. Something about that reminded me of my own reflection in the bathroom mirror. I laughed bitterly at the comparison. War is war. A broken marriage is something else. But betrayal cuts deep, no matter the battlefield. Weeks passed. The first stage of the divorce was finalized with a settlement agreement, done mostly through lawyers. I was left with the house, since you didn't want it. You told your lawyer it had too many memories. I paid you a lump sum, parted ways financially, and parted ways emotionally. A few months earlier, that might have destroyed me. Now I only felt the mild sting of losing money we once earned together. Life moves on. I learned from a mutual acquaintance that you'd moved into a small condo, closer to the city. Maybe you thought new scenery would help you start over. Maybe you didn't want to be haunted by the old places we used to frequent. You never asked for the wedding ring back, and I never sent it. My ring remained in a kitchen drawer under some old receipts. Yours probably ended up in a pawn shop or stashed away in a drawer of your own. It didn't matter. Then, about 6 months after that night in the restaurant, I encountered you by sheer chance at a grocery store. You were in the produce section, looking at apples. I froze for a second behind my shopping cart, unsure if I should turn and walk away. You turned your head and saw me. I read the shock in your eyes, quickly replaced by something else. Maybe sadness, maybe regret. We stared at each other for a moment that stretched. I forced a nod. You did the same. Then, quietly, you said, "Hi." "Hi," I replied, a bit stiff. You looked down at the apples in your hand, placed them back. "How are you?" "Fine," I said. We stood there, the smell of fresh fruit between us, strangers in a place where normal people go about their day. You began, but trailed off. I waited. You fumbled for words. "Different." "Yeah," I said. You swallowed. Well, neither of us had more to say. So I said, "Take care," and turned my cart toward another aisle. I felt your gaze on my back. Part of me wondered if you wanted to run after me. Ask me for something, an apology, forgiveness, a chance to talk. But you didn't, and I didn't stop. That was the end of it. I paid for my groceries, left the store, drove home without looking back. That night, I sat on the porch with a beer, gazing at the street where I'd once watched the police arrive for Trevor. The air felt still. The sky was a hazy mix of purple and orange. I could almost feel the echoes of that day, the rush of satisfaction and anger that had fueled my every move. Now the tension was gone, replaced by a calm emptiness. I had done what I thought I needed to do. You were alone. He was facing charges and I was here, breathing in the warm suburban dusk. I glanced at my phone, opened that old photo, our final anniversary shot. I realized this would be the last time I'd ever look at it. The shape of your smile still tugged at something in me, but it no longer felt personal. It was a memory of people who no longer existed. The moment we took that picture, we had no idea how quickly life could unravel. I closed the photo, deleted it without a second thought. Finally, as I drained the last of my beer, I felt a subtle shift in my chest. Perhaps it was acceptance. I gazed at the quiet street, the glow of house lights turning on, families inside, living their own stories. Who was I now? A man who'd learned the hard way that trust is fragile, that betrayal can snuff out love in an instant, that a single choice can shatter a home. I was also a man who had chosen revenge over forgiveness, and I couldn't take that back. That was my line crossed. A line I never expected to cross, but I did, and I owned it. I stood up, stepped inside, and placed the empty bottle next to the sink. I noticed the faint ring of condensation it left on the counter. For the first time in months, I felt something like clarity. Not happiness, not hope exactly, but a sense of forward motion. Maybe, in time, I'd figure out a new version of myself. That night, I finally slept through without waking in a cold sweat. When I rose the next morning, I looked at my reflection in the mirror. I saw a man with lines on his forehead that weren't there a year ago. A man whose eyes had lost their old softness. That was me now. The man who turned a paper boat of heartbreak into an unstoppable flood. If you asked me why, I'd say I had no other choice. But we always have choices, don't we? I kept going. Days blurred into new routines. I replaced the duvet on the bed, rearranged furniture, gave the living room a fresh coat of paint. The color was warmer than before, and the walls smelled of possibility. Sometimes, as I worked, I caught myself pausing, remembering a detail about you, your laugh, the way you curled up on the couch with a book. It didn't stab me like it once did. It was just memory, a part of who I used to be. One day, I looked online and found an update about Trevor's case. He'd struck a plea deal, something minimal, but it would stick to his record. Maybe it barred him from certain jobs. Maybe he had to go through probation. The article wasn't detailed, but it confirmed he wouldn't be free to simply roam unscathed. I clicked away. I felt no wave of triumph, just a quiet satisfaction. The man who had once made you laugh over expensive wine was now paying a price for more than just your fling. A price he should have paid the first time he hurt that girl. Maybe now justice had found him. Or maybe life just gave me the chance to deliver the blow. Another week. Another month. Eventually, I let my sister visit for a weekend. We talked. She tried to steer me toward therapy. I told her I was fine. We barbecued in the backyard, sipped iced tea. She gave me that worried look from time to time, but I ignored it. Enough of this. I was forging a path. Something stable, if not happy. One afternoon, I drove to a local diner I'd always liked. Simple burgers, cold beer, the kind of place that never tries to impress. That's just comfortable. I remembered how you hated it, called it greasy. But I didn't care. It felt good to sit in a booth alone, order a meal, watch the passers-by on the sidewalk. I realized I could do what I wanted without checking in with anyone. A strange kind of freedom, lonely but honest. Later on the same day, I stepped into a small park, inhaling the afternoon air, feeling the late sun warm my face. Families strolled with kids. A man jogged by with a dog. The playground rang with squeals of laughter. The world moved forward. My heart still felt heavy, but not broken. I leaned against a tree and watched the sun dip lower. The knowledge that I was alone, that you were gone, settled over me, and I found I could breathe. I'm not sure when the phrase first formed in my mind, but it reminded me of something I once muttered in the darkest hours. Next time, I'll choose someone who won't sell love for salmon tartare. That line drifted through me now with a hint of dark humor. Because in the end, that's what it felt like. You traded our vows for a fancy meal, a youthful grin, and a moment of excitement. Maybe there was more to it, but that's all I could see. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I pushed off from the tree and headed back to my car. My reflection in the windshield looked older, sharper. There was a finality in my posture, as though I'd left behind the ghosts that haunted me for months. I opened the door, got in, turned the key. The engine rumbled to life. I guess that's the end of the story. The rest is just a man driving forward, miles of open road, a faint echo of the past trailing behind like a discarded photograph. I might find someone else someday, or maybe I'll stay single. For now, I just know one thing. I've made peace with what I did, and no matter who judges me for it, I can't say I'd do it differently. You wanted your freedom. I wanted my revenge, and the boy paid his dues. There are no ribbons or bows on that ending. It's raw. It's real. And I stand by it. That's why you're listening to me now, because there's nothing left to do but hear the truth of how we came undone. Nothing left but the echoes of my footsteps on the porch, the hush of your voice saying my name when it was too late, and the memory of that paper boat spinning in the toilet. I never drowned it. I suppose some part of me wanted the final flush of our marriage to be the sound of your regret, not mine. Maybe that's cruel. Maybe not. It's just the way things are when everything you believed in falls apart in a glass of wine and a stolen kiss. I'm done now. That's the story.